Hello, everyone, and welcome. So, I want you to just take a quick second, take a deep breath, and ask yourself a really important question. Have you ever taken something for granted, assuming it'll always be there, only to realize its true value on the exact day you lose it forever? Maybe it's a friend who moves away, or just a daily routine you didn't even realize you loved. Well, today we're going carefully and thoughtfully through a deeply moving literary explainer. This whole idea of sudden, profound loss, that is literally the heartbeat of the story we are about to explore together.
All right, let's dive right into this explainer of Alphonse Daudet's beautiful story, The Last Lesson. Now, to truly understand what our characters are feeling, we kind of need to understand the world they're living in. This story is set way back during the Franco-Prussian War, right around 1870 to 1871. France was defeated by Prussia, which was led by Bismarck at the time. And because of this defeat, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine passed directly into Prussian hands. Literally, everything changed overnight. And today we're going to look super closely at the profound effect this massive political shift had on everyday life at just one small village school.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to take a chronological journey through the text to make absolutely sure you master every single crucial detail. We'll cover context and morning dread, an unusually quiet school, the shocking announcement, regret and failed recitation, the beauty of French, and finally, final bittersweet moments. So let's get started.
Section 1. Context and morning dread.
Let's step right into the shoes of our narrator, a young boy named Franz. It's this gorgeous, warm, incredibly bright morning, and he is heading off to school, very, very late. Now, make sure you note this first crucial phrase. Franz was in great dread of a scolding. This just means he was in a state of extreme fear or apprehension. Why? Well, his teacher, Hamel, had announced he'd be questioning the students on participles. And poor Franz? He absolutely didn't know the first word about the rules for participles. His dread is so intense, he's actually thinking about just running away and spending the whole day outdoors.
And honestly, you can't blame him, because the outside world is totally calling his name. It's warm, the birds are chirping beautifully at the edge of the woods, and right behind the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers are actually out there doing their drills. All of this is way more tempting than boring grammar rules, right? But Franz actually shows a lot of strength. He resists the temptation and hurries off. On his way, he passes the town hall and there's a huge crowd gathered in front of the bulletin board. You see, for the last 2 years, all their bad news, lost battles, the draft, orders from the commanding officer, it all came from that exact board. Franz is thinking, what can be the matter now? As he's rushing by, Wachter, the blacksmith who's out there reading the bulletin with his apprentice, yells out to him, "Don't go so fast, bub. You'll get your school in plenty of time." Franz just figures Wachter is making fun of him.
Section 2. An unusually quiet school. So Franz keeps running and finally reaches M. Hamel's little garden, completely out of breath. He's totally expecting the environment to be like any other chaotic morning. Which brings us to another super important textbook phrase, a great bustle. This just means a lot of noisy, busy activity. Usually, when school began, there was such a great bustle that you could hear it all the way out in the street. We're talking desks opening and closing, and the teacher's heavy iron ruler rapping loudly on the table demanding silence. So, here is the crucial point. Franz had counted on that exact noise. To count on something means to rely or depend upon it happening. He had totally planned to use all that loud commotion to just slip quietly into his desk without his strict teacher even noticing him. And part of that normal morning noise was the students reciting in unison. This is an idiom that means happening together or at exactly the same time. The students would normally repeat their lessons super loud all together, often literally keeping their hands over their ears just so they could understand the lesson over the noise of their own voices. But think about the sheer contrast of this particular day. On a normal morning, like we just said, there's a great bustle, loud unison repetition, rapping rulers, the whole shebang. But this morning? It was as still and quiet as a Sunday morning. Through the window, Franz can actually see his classmates already sitting quietly in their places, and M. Hamel is just pacing up and down the room with that terrible iron ruler tucked firmly under his arm.
Imagine the pure terror in young Franz's heart right now. Without any noise to hide him, he has to physically open the door and walk in front of everybody in dead silence. He is blushing terribly and is just incredibly frightened. But to his absolute shock, nothing bad happens. M. Hamel simply looks at him and says, super kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you."
It's only after Franz jumps over his bench and sits at his desk, finally catching his breath, that he notices something else that's really unusual.
Hamel is wearing his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and his little black silk cap, which is fully embroidered. This specific, formal attire is something the teacher literally never wore except on special inspection and prize days. The whole school just feels strange and incredibly solemn.
But the biggest surprise of all is sitting right at the back of the classroom, on those back benches that were usually totally empty. The village people are sitting quietly, just like the students. You've got old Hauser wearing his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others. Everybody looks so deeply sad. Old Hauser even brought an old primer with him, a basic reading book. The book is thumbed at the edges, which means it's worn out and soiled from being handled repeatedly by thumbs over many years. He's holding it open on his knees, with his great spectacles lying right across the pages.
Section 3. The shocking announcement.
As Franz is sitting there wondering about all these strange things, Mr. Hamel gently mounts his chair. And guys, we have reached the turning point of our story. He speaks in this grave, gentle tone. Listen carefully to these exact words. My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive. Franz literally describes these words as a thunderclap. Suddenly, that bad news at the town hall bulletin board makes terrifying sense. His life has changed in an absolute instant.
Section 4. Regret and failed recitation.
The moment those words leave M. Hamel's mouth, Franz undergoes this profound internal transformation. His attitude shifts entirely from typical childhood apathy to just deep, deep regret. Let's look at the sudden realizations hitting him. He realizes he barely even knows how to write his own language, and now he has to stop learning it entirely. He deeply regrets all the time he wasted seeking birds' eggs or going sliding on the river Saar instead of studying. His heavy grammar and history books, which honestly felt like a total nuisance just moments ago, suddenly feel like old friends that he just cannot bear to part with. He completely forgets about M. Hamel's crankiness and his terrible iron ruler. The very idea that the master is going away breaks his heart, and finally it clicks. He understands exactly why the old village men are sitting in the back of the room. They're there because they're sorry they didn't go to school more. It's their way of thanking M. Hamel for 40 years of faithful service and showing respect for a country that is suddenly theirs no more. Amidst all these super heavy thoughts, Franz hears his name called. Yep, it is his turn to recite that dreadful rule for participles. He desperately wants to say it loudly and clearly without a single mistake, but he gets completely mixed up on the very first words. He just stands there holding his desk, his heart beating, way too ashamed to even look up. But M. Hamel doesn't scold him. Instead, the teacher says that they all have a great deal to reproach ourselves with. Please note this idiom. It means to express disapproval or disappointment in one's own actions. Let's look at exactly who shares this blame. Section 5. The beauty of French. So, M. Hamel refuses to just place all the blame on young Franz. Instead, he systematically unpacks the shared blame of their entire community. First, he points out that the great trouble with the district of Alsace is that she always puts off learning till tomorrow. And now, the Prussians have every right to ask how they can pretend to be Frenchmen when they can neither speak nor write their own language. But the parents are to blame too. They weren't anxious enough for their kids to learn. They actually preferred to put them to work on farms or at the mills just to earn a little extra money. And M. Hamel, he humbly admits his own faults too. He asks himself, didn't he often send students to water his garden flowers instead of making them learn their lessons? And didn't he just give them a holiday whenever he felt like going fishing? After admitting all these faults, M. Hamel goes on to speak of the French language. He calls it the most beautiful, clearest, and most logical language in the entire world, urging them to guard it among themselves and never, ever forget it.
Section 6. Final bittersweet moments.
Right after the grammar lesson, the class moves into the final, profoundly quiet writing lesson of the morning. Hamel had prepared brand new copies for the students that day, written in a beautiful round hand, bearing the words France, Alsace, France, Alsace. Franz notes that these papers look like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hanging from the rods at the tops of their desks. The environment is perfectly silent. I mean, you could literally hear a pin drop. The only sound is the scratching of pens over paper. At one point, some beetles actually fly right into the room, but nobody pays any attention to them at all, not even the littlest students, who are busy tracing their fishhooks, as if even those shapes were French.
In the middle of this intense, heavy silence, Franz hears the pigeons cooing very low on the roof of the school. And this triggers a highly emotional internal thought for him. He asks himself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? This is such a powerful, heavy moment, isn't it? It perfectly highlights the unnatural, overwhelming force of the new Prussian orders trying to control the very soul of their environment.
As the lesson finally draws to a close, Franz looks up and sees M. Hamel sitting absolutely motionless in his chair. He's just gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he's trying to permanently fix in his mind exactly how everything looked in that little schoolroom where he had taught for 40 long years. When the church clock finally strikes 12 and the trumpets of the returning Prussian soldiers sound right under the windows, M. Hamel stands up, looking very, very pale. He tries to speak. He says, "My friends, but emotion completely chokes him. He just can't go on. He simply turns to the blackboard and writes Vive la France as large as he possibly can, leans his head against the wall, and gestures with his hand that school is dismissed. My dear students, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. When a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it's as if they have the key to their prison. What truly happens to the identity of a culture when its words are silenced by force? Thank you so much for learning with me today. Always keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.